What's poppin', yo? Welcome back to another YouTube video, and today I sat down again and watched Season 3 of Outer Banks. I sat down from 7 AM till 4 PM, and I watched it. I hate the AM, I hate the PM. I'm here to watch and review stuff for you. I am personally a night owl, so I didn't appreciate getting up at 7 o'clock, but I had to watch this show, to get this season finished in one day, and I'm glad I did. So how Season 3 starts is exactly where Season 2 left off, with the group on Popelandia on this desert island, a little bit later, because they have an established island session going, and I'm going to be honest, they're thriving on that island. They are thriving. They are surviving, they're all happy, they're all excited. Popelandia is looking good. They see a plane fly overhead, it picks them up, it takes them to, I don't know where, I'm going to be honest, I don't want to guess just in case I get it wrong, and Kiara gets kidnapped. It just so happens that Rafe is trying to make a business deal with this man, which is false pretenses, and they are locked up, and he is looking for the diary of, the guy who they've been sort of following the trail of for the past couple of weeks. Pope does have that diary in his backpack, and, he refuses to give it over to the guy. And they try and save Kiara. Kiara and Rafe save themselves. Kiara steals the boat, and they all sort of meet up. John B then fucking dips because he hears a church bell ringing, just like how his father used to ring. He finds his father, they all go back to Outer Banks. Everything starts to go a little awry. JB no longer is talking to his friends and is being made to lie to them by his father. So his father is pretty toxic and probably not the man he remembers, but at least he's alive. So John B and his father go on this mission and they follow the trail. John B refuses to tell the group and starts to fall out with Sarah. Sarah then has a little bit of a good time, a little bit of too much of a good time with Topper, and then they fall out, and John B then fights with Topper, getting himself in prison. His dad gets kidnapped by these guys who are looking for the same treasure, the guy that we met on the island previously. We then have them, having a good thing going on, and Chloe and Pope are working out the same mystery that his dad and John B are doing, and they come to the pretty much same conclusion, which isn't the best thing, gonna be honest, like going to the same conclusion, but Then Kiara gets sent to a special camp. JJ goes to get them. The dad comes back to yell at Rafe and says you can take the plane. Rafe then sets his dad to be murdered because he's trying to sell the cross which he worked so hard to get, and in doing this, they all get on the plane and head to the sort of other island where the gold is. They then get to that island, they split up yet again, they all sort of start to realize how shitty John B's dad is, and in doing so, he gets shot, they find the gold, the main villain dies, and the dad comes back and saves his daughter from being murdered, and that's pretty much how the story goes. I probably skipped over a couple of things, but, that's just how it is. It is a 12-minute video covering a 10-hour series. So if I did miss anything, I do apologize, but definitely go check out the series for yourself, because it is incredible. Now, this one is really cool because it does have a lot of foreshadowing, which the other series did not have. And it is done in a much creative way. You can see the item before the characters do, or you get to look at a location before the characters see it to sort of see what's coming next. It builds up tension, it builds up suspense, it sort of shows us stuff that's happening. We see stuff falling off places or being dropped by characters and then being zoomed in to the camera to sort of show that this is important and will come back to haunt the characters later. And it isn't like a straight away payoff. Sometimes you do have to wait a couple of episodes to get that payoff, and it's like, oh my god, that's what happens, and then you get a pretty good solid memory, a pretty good solid conclusion, and a nice sort of solid feeling, because the payoff is worth the foreshadowing, and it is good. Not like how Smile 2 does foreshadowing, which is extremely in your face, where it does a full slow zoom to the object holds on it for a good 5 seconds, and then that payoff is instant. That payoff is instantaneous within the next 5 minutes. That doesn't feel as satisfying as the payoffs do in Outer Banks, because in Outer Banks we have the solid sort of setup, and then we get made to wait to see the payoff, which I feel is much more like story driven and is much more rewarding because we had to wait for it. It's not as sort of instant, and it's a long-lasting effect that the foreshadowing has. What they sort of drop is important, is key, and will have a pretty big impact on the rest of the story. They also use a lot of lighting situations, very similar and very basic school knowledge of a yellow tint to the screen means it's a hot location, and a blue tint to the screen means it's a cold location. And they use this quite often. Majority of the time it has a yellow tint over it because it's quite a hot island that they live on, and other times it has a pretty blue tint because it is nighttime, it is dark. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't really care. It doesn't really make the scene, it doesn't really add, it doesn't make or break a scene if you have this cold filter or bright filter on. It just doesn't do anything for the filter. It doesn't do anything for the scene, it's just there. What does affect the scene is with the added tension of the weather. A lot of sort of weather and lighting and matching the characters' emotions. With a big storm coming, that's foreshadowing danger, threat, and normally nothing good can happen from a storm when the characters are involved. And that's really good because it shows upcoming trouble, a storm is brewing, shit's going down, shit's gonna go sideways, and shit's gonna hit the fan. And that does happen, and it does be shown in the lighting. We have a lot of lighting being used on their faces, where we have half of the character's face being lit up by a red light, and half of it in the darkness, showing that they're only being half honest and half truthful, again, with Sarah cheating on John B with Topper, and again, with John B sort of not telling the group the full truth. Both of this lighting happens in the same scene after both of these actions take place, and that is really important because it's being lit by the campfire and only half their face is being shown when they're like telling or avoiding these sort of talking points, which I think is beautiful storytelling and a way of showing the character not being fully truthful and showing the character is having internal struggles because, again, John B doesn't like lying to his friends, and Sarah doesn't like what she did. So having the lighting show that and affect that is brilliant. Also, lighting has a very big story point because the way they find the treasure in the end through the cave is really good. Like they see that story, they see that, and it's fucking brilliant. Like, it is, the lighting is very prominent, very important this season because there's no light. The riddles were extremely easy to figure out. I fucking got them, like, straight off the bat. I called them. I fucking knew what was happening with these riddles. I was on the ball, and I felt smart for, like, figuring out these riddles. The riddles did feel quite basic, though. It does feel like the basic treasure hunter riddles where, oh, you have to turn off the lights to follow the glowing stuff, and oh, you have to go in the cave, you have to swim through water. It just felt like the basic sort of treasure hunter's guide. And it did feel like it did, like, have to tick a few boxes, which, you know, isn't that great. It did feel kind of boring and lackluster towards the end. It felt very, like, structured, like a generic sort of heist sort of adventure movie, very similar to, like, Jungle Cruise or something like that. And I wasn't a huge fan of that style of storytelling. But, you know, it was still good. And I still enjoyed the season. The build-up and the characters were really nice. Introducing a new villain and bringing a villain back from Season 2 into this one. Bringing John B's dad back as well. And then killing him off again at the end of this season. No one can stay alive. And no one can stay dead. Like, no one can stay alive. And no one can stay dead. Like, everyone comes back eventually, and everyone dies. So, it does feel like it is falling into the Stranger Things trap of keeping everyone alive, and we've had so many close calls that it does feel like these characters do have plot armor, and it does feel like the show is just keeping everybody alive because it doesn't want to kill anyone off. And I hope that that trend doesn't continue. I hope that John's B dad does stay dead and Sarah's dad stays dead, because this season ended with a satisfying conclusion with them getting and keeping the gold. Like, it does feel satisfying. It does feel like they've done a good job with it, and it does feel like this chapter of that story has finished. So hoping that they all stay dead is good. It did end on a cliffhanger, so it does go into a season 4, and I'm glad that this story arc has finished. I did feel like they were dragging it out a little bit with 3 separate parts to the treasure. It did feel cool figuring some of the stuff out and seeing the payoffs and seeing them work it out together as a team, needing everybody to work it out, and that was good. It did feel rewarding, and it did feel like friendship is like one of the biggest sort of story points and one of the biggest messages of this show. It does also feel like one of the biggest messages of this show is it doesn't matter where you come from, you can do anything you put your mind to. And I like that, and sometimes, like, the wrong thing or the right thing, you have to do a wrong thing. Like, you know, to do the right thing, you have to do a wrong thing. That's another message of the show, because they break the law a lot, but it ends up working out for them, and they always take the right path as well. So, yes, they do beat the shit out of one another, and that does get them into trouble. And it does actually feel like they are being punished for some of the actions that they're taking now, which I do appreciate, because it does make the story a little bit more believable and a little bit more realistic compared to, you know, some of the prior seasons where they would beat the shit out of Topper and nothing would happen and nothing would come about it. Because Topper is a rich prick, he would definitely do something about it, and he does do something about it in this season, which is pretty interesting. Other than that, that's my full opinions on Season 3.